Welcome inside the Paris Sea Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is a special July 4th edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Please go to our website, powertalk.live. Download our free app and stream all of our live local programming, including Solomon on Blast, the Jim Parisi Show, and yours truly, the Jake Feinberg Show. And we'd like to thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And I get to bring in today a cat. I was hanging out in Vegas in Henderson last week with Clarence McDonald, and he told me, he said, there's a cat that you really need to talk to. And he's a good dear friend of mine, and he was part of one of the hippest bands in the world at the time, known as the Checkmates. They were really the hottest act going in Vegas at the time, and it is an honor. Sonny Charles, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, Jake, thank you for having me on, man.
Hey, man. Happy Independence Day, man. Can I just read you something I transcribed today and then get your feedback on it?
Sure.
Do you know the percussionist? I don't know, the Heath brothers. I told you about. This is from Mtume, who is a really great percussionist. Now retired, but I just want to read this to you. This is from an interview last week. He said, as a black man in America, there's nothing new about what happened to Philando Castile. The only thing that's new about white cops getting off when they kill somebody black is that even having a film of it doesn't make a difference. Rodney King, you saw the footage and those guys got off. Now we see white cops that can murder you in cold blood on film, and white people and the jury won't convict a white cop for killing a black person. And I know that you came of age and your career really started during one of the more progressive civil rights pushes in our country's history. But can you talk a little bit about how you feel if justice is served for the black community, and if in fact what Independence Day means to you?
Well, the thing about it is so confusing in so many ways. Yes, we do need police. We do need them, and that's, I don't care what part of the city you live in, ghetto or projects or what. If you need the police, you're going to call them. But at the same time, we fear the police. I mean, even the way I live my life now, and I certainly have no conflict with law enforcement at all.
Right.
Never in my life have I. But I still have a fear. There's just an inherent fear for it, and I don't understand it. I don't know why I should feel this way, but I do. And I know just about all the other black folks I know have this inherent paranoia. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, it's there. And do I trust the police? I can't say I do.
No, I mean if you could, I mean, I'm 39-year-old cat. Clearly, my skin is white. I actually really believe deeply in that we're all one human race. I never quite understand why, but is there? I mean, I have been deeply moved by, and I haven't followed it that closely. Truthfully, I don't watch cable news, so I haven't obsessed over this Philando. This is the cat who got killed by the police officer in Minnesota, Philando Castile. That's what he was talking about.
Yes.
And I am totally with you that that police are a necessary presence to keep the peace, but I even notice now this weaponization, this militarization of the police, especially since 9/11 coming back from Iraq. There's this surplus of weapons that you would use on the battlefield that now are being carried by just regular law enforcement officers. So I think that paranoia spreads to all people of the human race. But what do you inside? I mean, can you talk about the feelings that you have when there's film and footage? Rodney King, there was film and footage of him being beaten. Now, he wasn't killed, but everyone said, hey, they're going to get those guys now, and those guys got off. And now we live in an age where you can literally in real time film this stuff film and footage does not matter anymore. That's what Mtume went on to say later. And I mean, can you talk about, is there, even at your age now, I mean, you've been on this earth for quite a while, and the arc of history is long, but can you talk
Yes.
about the feelings inside when you see something like this in, like, you know, it's been going on forever, but now you see it in film and footage, and it's still, and justice is still not served. I mean, people are waving the flag today. It's July 4th. We're talking. I'm so excited to hang with you. But what do you feel inside when you see that?
Well, you know what, what I feel inside is I fight off the feeling of I'm not going to say that we're helpless in this situation. I'm not going to say that we don't have any alternative, because the only alternative we have, I mean, I've heard guys say, you only hear about the cops shooting an unarmed black man. You
Right.
don't hear about them shooting a black man. So, which means, okay, so now do we all arm ourselves and we end up in conflict like some, no, it can't be that way. That just can't happen. I mean, and for us to live a civil life, that just can't happen. And until they start vetting these officers better and applying some punishments for what happens. I mean, you know, you can get stopped and pushed around by policemen. They yell at you, they disrespect you. I've had that happen to me several times, just on simple traffic stops.
Wow.
And you know, I mean, and I've been in the car with white guys, and they get stopped, and you never hear that.
Ever.
Never hear that.
No, and you don't see
Shut up.
and you don't see white cops killing white people anyway. In general, you know, I mean,
No.
that doesn't happen.
No, it just, no, unless it's a standoff.
Exactly.
You know, yeah, where the other guy.
But let me ask you a question. Let me ask you about what the other thing. I mean, it may be totally pie in the sky, but taking it away from the law enforcement, what about independent prosecutors? I mean, ultimately, prosecutors are elected officials, you know, and that to me is like, do we need? I mean, would we ever get to a point of getting to the independent prosecutor? Because the prosecutors are coming in with their own point of view anyway. They have quotas to fill, and they're also protecting the status quo. I mean, to me, it's a very, I mean, we are still, you know, it's just justice we've just seen this stuff play out in real time over and over again recently. I kind of felt like I was living through some kind of post-racial society of some sort in the 90s. It just seemed not as amped up, and now we're just in this like toxic mess, and yet your people have just been, you know, it doesn't seem fair, and I can't even imagine what it would feel like inside, you know. And I don't necessarily have. I'm not even asking you to break down an answer or anything like that.
Yeah, I know, but you know, sometimes I think, I wonder if there's paying your dues to get, like a initiation to get into the right club. So you got to shoot one of us.
Mm.
You know what I mean? I mean, all these sort of ideas pop in my head. I hope it's not true. But you know, yeah, man, I got one too. You know, so okay, now you're in the special club. I don't know. It feels that way a lot of times. Now, you know, we can only go by what we feel, and because I don't know the real thoughts that goes on in these guys' heads, but I know this much: they know that there's going to be, it'll be some aggravation, but there won't be punishment for doing it.
Yeah, right. There won't be justice. That's the point. I mean, this guy, you can fire someone. I mean, whatever. I mean, people get fired all the time. I mean, when you murder someone or you don't follow protocol, I mean, they just refuse to actually ever send police to jail, period. I mean, it doesn't matter in South Carolina. You could drop a gun next to the guy. I mean, that guy he shot him in the back running away, and then he dropped a gun next to him, and he got off. It's like, what?
But you know what? Richard Pryor said it. He goes, justice is just us. You know, and see, I grew up in Arkansas in the 40s, in the 1940s, where we had to step off the sidewalk if we were walking in. White people were coming toward us or behind us. We had to step off the sidewalk. That was just the way it was. So as a small child, I didn't think anything of it because my dad did it, and all the other black folks I knew, adults, did it without even thinking, without even any hesitation or frown on their face or anything. It was just the way it was. And so, a lot of people from my generation grew up with that idea. That's just the way it is. You know what I mean? And just like now, and I'm going through the '60s when we did the marches and we did all of the resistance to segregation. That was a very enlightening time for us, and it was a very time for the first time we felt some power. Still, it wasn't equal power, but it was some power. We knew we could make some changes in our life. And
How did you know? Can I ask you be as specific as possible about how you knew that you weren't? I mean, power is that word can be taken many different ways, but how did you know that you were gaining power or momentum, and that also you were on the right side of history?
Well, you know what? My whole idea about that changed when I was a very young boy, and this might be going back a little bit beyond the subject you just mentioned. But
No, it's fine.
when I was a young boy, we were sharecroppers, and my dad had just gone to the cotton gin to drop off his wagon load of cotton, and we went to the little general store, which was sort of like a company store. The guy who owned the plantation we worked on, I called it a plantation, they called it a farm, but it was all black sharecroppers working there. And all of a sudden, I saw my dad reach across the counter and grab this white guy.
Wow.
And pull him across the counter, and he said, "I'm a man just like you," and shoved the guy back. And the owner of the store looked up and goes, "I told you not to mess with Charlie." And at that point, I was frightened. I can't tell you how frightened I was. But there was something inside me says, yeah, I'm not going to let them push me around this way. I'm going to live my life the way I want to live my life. And that's always been inside me. And so I've never gone the way of I just live my life the way I want to, and I go where I want to go, and I'm around whoever I want to be around, and that one moment inspired me to not be think of myself as I'm a black man, so I can't do this, or I got to do it the black way, or I got to do it this way or that way. I don't know if that changes it. But
can I just? I want to be clear. I want to be clear. When your dad, was his name Charlie? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
So the owner of the when he grabbed the guy by the shirt, the owner of the store looked at his employee and said, "I told you not to mess with Charlie." Is that what he said?
Yeah.
Wow.
I told you not to mess with Charlie. Because
Yep.
And for me, I asked my dad about it later, and he would never talk about it. So there was he had some sort of a reputation that I know about, and still to this day I didn't know about. Because the guy's got.
This is. I mean, talking to Sonny Charles already. He's going there with me. But how did you take it? How did you channel that social consciousness? I mean, it's very, music parallels what's going on in society and what's happening in your soul at the time. And I just wanted you to talk about when you were just kind of getting on the bandstand as a professional, how you took that social consciousness movement of that time in the early to mid 60s and channeled it into the love music that you created.
The thing about us, our band was a Vegas show band, sort of. I mean, we played white clubs. We never played black clubs. We never had a black audience at Checkmates. Our audience wasn't basically black, like with the Temptations and the Motown people and the Stax people like that. We were never in that group. We were a Vegas act. So so we basically play. I remember having this one other performer said, "You know, Sonny, you know how to perform for white people."
Hmm.
And I looked at it to say, "Well, that's all I've ever performed for, basically." That's always been my
Yeah, well,
audience.
I mean, I've never had a chance to perform for other people.
Just like Sammy Davis and Nat King Cole and all those guys who did back in those days. You either did the Chitlin circuit, you know, or you moved into the nightclub circuit, and that's what we were. We were doing supper clubs in Vegas and doing those sort of things.
Wow.
So basically, that was where where my career led me, and so in I guess in that way, I never really had to deal with a lot of the uh, uh, stuff from the black community. I don't know how I can say that because all of my relatives and a lot of my friends, they were not like I was divorced from it or separated from what went on in the black community. But as far as professionally, I always sang in basically white club.
Did you receive? I mean, you had to sing for your supper, obviously, but did you? Did you take any flack from your people because of that? I mean, did they? Or because here's the thing. There's a street code that Clarence and I vetted pretty hard, and he broke down for me off air when I was in Henderson, and it has to do with this idea of placating to either growing up with money, being middle class, not coming from the street, not being truly authentic. You dig
Yeah.
I mean, did you get that, and how did you handle it?
Well, basically, when I was confronted with that sort of thing, I just said, hey, I live my life and you live yours. And I wouldn't get into any, I wouldn't get into any conversation about it because there's no way to explain that. And most times, I just got to say, I don't know. Most times, I just never really ran into that because when I'm with my black friends, which are most of my friends are black guys, and I don't know why that is, but I have a lot of white friends also. But well, basically, the way I am is like I just deal with people. I don't really deal with races, and that's just the way I think. And so when people go, you're not black enough, that drives me nuts. Because what's that supposed to mean? Nobody says you're not white enough, I don't think. But maybe they do. I don't know.
Can you talk about the incident that occurred with Sonny Charles and the Checkmates when you refused to play for a mixed audience? Clarence told me, but it's a little bit fuzzy, and I want to get it on the record. It's an important story.
Here's what happened. We were in Vegas, and I think he's meaning the time when we first came to Vegas, 1963. Prior to that, in 1960, Nat King Cole had actually did the first big integration move in Vegas. I don't know if you know this story, but
Why don't you just tell the whole thing?
Okay, here's what happened. Nat King Cole was in France, and he saw the Lido show, and he invited them to his show while he was in Paris. So when the Lido show came to Las Vegas, they invited Nat King Cole to come to the Stardust to see them. When he came there, the Stardust people say, well, you can watch the show from the wings or the light booth. And when the Lido people found out about it, they go, no show unless Nat King Cole is sitting King's Row Center. And so they held off 45 minutes or so, and then finally he said, okay, put Nat King Cole in the center of the room. The audience loved him. Everybody was there to get pictures. Everybody wanted autographs. And the owners had a sigh of relief because they thought it was going to be a riot. And from that point on, they started letting black people come to the showrooms. That was, now it was still segregated, so you can only sit in one section. There was a section set up for it. So flash forward to 1963, when we got there, we were playing at a place called the Pussycat A Go-Go. It was a nightclub, dancing and stuff like that. It was two stages. One, they had the Go-Go girls and cages and stuff. It was back in that era. And so we were playing, and it was a mixed audience, but there was about, say, maybe 10 tables that were set us on the side for black folks. The rest of the club was open for anybody, Chinese, Mexican, whoever you wanted to be. I mean, Asians, Mexicans, everybody else had the rest of the room. So here it was, wintertime, raining outside, just really horrible. There were some seats open in the regular area, and there were black folks standing in line. So we refused to go on until they let them in. The thing that was so stupid about it, Jake, is that they would dance together anyway. Because these people worked at the same hotels, they knew each other, they, you know what I mean? They were friends. So they would get up and dance together and everything, and then go to separate seating. So we refused to go until finally they submitted to it, the owner, and let people sit where they wanted to. The next day, there was a thing in the paper. It's called the Las Vegas Sun, I believe. And it said, Checkmates integrate strip. It was just like a headline on a paragraph.
Right.
You know what? I've tried to find that article. It's like somebody said, what are you doing? And they got rid of the article. They don't have it in their microfiche and none of that stuff anymore. But anyway, we went through that sort of thing. When we first came to Vegas, the bosses told us, okay, leave the white girls alone. If they come after you, you go somewhere else. You don't do it on the strip.
I'm sorry. This is unbelievable.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, we sat down with four bosses, and they set us all together to tell us the rules. And, of course, we didn't play by those rules. I mean, because that was the lesson that my dad showed me when he grabbed that guy. No, I'm a man just like you. I'll do what I want to do. I live my life just as, my head held high like anybody else. And not saying I'm some revolutionary or some tough guy, because I'm not.
No, that is what your dad said. It just resonates across. That's just humanity.
Yes.
That's just humanity.
Yes.
All right. That's just treating somebody. I mean, I still need to work on that every day. I mean, clearly I'm not bigoted, and I haven't lived in the deep South where, you look past somebody of color and refuse to serve them, or I've never, but just dude, drop the prejudice, drop the cultural bias,
Yeah.
And don't, and then when people become enraged or they've suffered enough and they get angry or rioting, all of a sudden it's like, no, stop protesting, stop being so shrill and loud. It's and I can, and that's not fair. These people have a right to I think that was the most, being that I didn't live through the movement, the most refreshing thing about the 60s, the civil rights movement, was that there was education, philosophy, spirituality, and music, and it all seemed to be going together. It seemed to be channeling together. On top of that, it also seemed like there was an impetus within our legislative branch to continue to tweak laws that would make it so that the civil rights could continue to grow. Today, it just seems. Today, it seems to be. We are more diverse than ever before, more multicultural than ever before, but yet we seem to know less and less about our roots and, unfortunately, about our history. And so, I just wonder how you know.
You know what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Here's one of the things I think. When I look at the schooling now that kids go through, and they have Black History Month, Uh, why can't it just be History Month? How come that whole thing can't be just part of basic history? Why does it have to be isolated so that white kids look at it and go, oh, this is black history? No, it's not black history. This is United States history.
I love it.
You know what I mean?
Oh, no, it's so interesting.
Slavery,
yeah.
all of that stuff. That's U.S. history. That's not black history. You know, the whole thing with the Indian movement and all of that stuff. And the thing now with the immigration stuff that they're doing now is all aimed at you know, keep America great again is keep America white again. And every black person I know knows that.
Well, I just put this thing up. I just put it up on Facebook today. This quote from Mtume that I read half of it. The other half is like, you got Jeff Sessions now. They are discriminating based on the kind of drugs you do. Why is there going to be all this money for opioid addiction? Because
exactly.
White cats are addicted and they're dying and they're ODing on it.
Yeah.
So they have to go to health centers. You get crack cocaine.
Cocaine and crack.
You know,
cocaine and crack was criminal.
Blacks could go to prison. You know, and you know what it is?
Yeah.
Someone can push back on me and say, you know, okay, you know, and they can give me some sort of, you know, excuse about, you know, just take Philandro Castillo, you know, just how he handled himself, or, you know, he didn't listen, whatever. It's like, no. Here's the point. I don't know how to explain this to my children. You understand? Like, that's the problem. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. So I don't know how to explain this. And it's the same thing. It's like, I love that. Why does it have to be Black History Month? Why can't it just be wrapped into history? Because already you're just separating it and saying, oh, we're giving them a month to dedicate to what they think history is. No, this is what history is.
Yeah, it's U.S. history. It's when I was in the service. I'm getting out of it. I just went through.
It's okay. You just go where you go. You go where you go.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to carry a weapon for this country, and I stopped at a place in Indianapolis. I lived in Indiana at the time, and they wouldn't serve me. They told me to go around to the takeout window. I had my uniform on, and I looked at the lady and I said, you know what? I'm getting ready to carry a gun for you, and you won't sell me a hamburger. No, you have to go around the window. It's not me, but you have to go around to the window. And I looked at that and I'm saying, it was worse than that for my dad. So it was better. My life was better than his. My son's lives are better than mine was at that age. And so, you know, it's getting better. But there's always such a thing. It's just like it seems like our policies in our country is meant to keep us divided, to keep us separated, to keep that tension among us. I don't understand. Maybe it's the way somebody is making money off of this. I don't know. You just have to wonder.
I mean, how do you know that your son's lives are better?
Well, because so far they haven't been refused service anywhere because of their skin color.
Interesting. So they've never had one of these.
You know what I mean?
But that was very. See, you grew up still when it was very overt. It was very overt.
Oh yeah.
So they don't feel the covert stuff, or they just really don't. They've never really, because there's a lot of covert stuff still going on. You know.
Yeah. Well, my oldest son is a department head at Washington State University, so he's in the university system.
Sure.
So it's pretty diverse. My youngest son's a bartender, so you know he's just here in town, and he's not discriminated against in that way. But the point I'm saying is that they can just more or less assimilate into life just like anybody else. You know what I mean? Now, maybe it's because they're educated enough and they speak properly and they dress properly and all of those things. So there's no real obvious reasons to be fearful of them And that's one of the things I think. I get the impression that 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 there's a fear of black folks, a fear of colored. Colored. Here I am using that word. I grew up with it.
It's all right. Yeah.
There's a fear. There's a fear of minorities, and that fear seems to be because they know what went wrong with us, what happened with us. I've talked to so many white people who would say, "I wouldn't have stood for that." You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I hope. I mean, I hope. I hope they would. You know, I mean, hindsight's 20. Continue, please.
Yeah, but they will say I wouldn't have stood for that. I couldn't have. I don't know. I just look at it to say the racial situation should be handled different, especially with the police. The police have got to figure this out. And it's not so much the population got to figure it out. It's the police that's got to figure this out. You just can't shoot people for a traffic stop.
I mean, especially because if you, I mean, that you talk about the fear. That cop was, say what you want about his capacity as an actual law enforcement officer, but he when Philandro notified him that he was carrying a gun and was reaching for, I mean, the guy freaked out. He was clearly threatened for some, I mean, I wouldn't want to be a cop. Okay. I mean,
I wouldn't either.
Like I recognize that it's a really dangerous gig. It just seems to me that if they're not going to follow a code of conduct because they know that justice will not be served, then how are you ever going to really make any progress as a society? I didn't realize our conversation was going to go in this direction, but I mean, this is like, I mean, I woke up, I transcribed this stuff, and I'm like, it's July 4th, and I mean, I feel pretty lucky in a lot of ways, but man, again, this comes back to like me talking to my daughters about, and it doesn't help that you now have an administration that is looking to basically politicize everything, including law enforcement, including military, and you have, let's face it, the Attorney General of the United States is from Southern Alabama, which was one of the most racist places in this country, and one of the most segregated places in this country. So how can you not have any faith that they're going to uphold a certain standard with these kind of peeps in office? It is to me. Do you feel like this is a somewhat historic time in your life? Have you ever lived through a time like this before?
I am so confused about the state of national politics right now because everybody, the saying is that I've heard several times is that everybody who voted for Trump was not racist, but everybody who was racist voted for Trump. So the whole idea is so scary. It's really scary because I mean, even you just don't know what's going to happen next. For Sessions to be Attorney General was not just coincidence. This guy was put there on purpose. I think that whole alt-right situation that's happening now and all of that is it's just really frightening because these good people sitting in our Congress, and they're not all racist, but they're sure not doing anything to change it. They're not doing anything to stop this. They're saying for some reason they just can't pull themselves away from the party lines and all that kind of stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's about knowing that if they actually took a stand for justice, that they would essentially be out of power for some period of time, which is not.
Yeah.
And so greed, and I mean that's the other part of it is that you have, it's. Did you ever play on the Chitlin circuit, or you literally just played supper clubs? I'm just. This is like. I'd love you to, if
I
you.
did a few jobs when Black Pearl came out. Of course, Black Pearl was an anthem in the black community, and it was a theme song for the Miss Black America contest for a few years, I understand. And so, yeah, I had some opportunities to do it when I did some solo stuff. And I tell you, it's a whole different. I didn't really feel comfortable there because I never did it before. I'd always played supper clubs and stuff. I never did that sort of thing. And so my show wasn't really set for that audience. That's a situation where I wasn't black enough.
Wow. You weren't,
But,
right, that is exact. You weren't black enough.
I wasn't black enough to play the chitlin circuit because, you know, I was a supper club guy. You know,
Right, that's the supper club cat over there, man.
Yeah, I hung out with Sinatra and Sammy Davis and all those guys. So, and you know what? And I have no regrets about it at all. I really have enjoyed my life and still am enjoying my life. But yeah, you know what? And I feel it this way. I've never really been that affected by racism to the point that I haven't been able to live my life the way I wanted to. Now, have I been denied loans? Yes. But fortunately, I did okay. You know, I bought my house through my GI, you know, because I was a soldier, so I got a GI, a veteran's loan, and they got my house that way, so I didn't have to worry about that other, you know, trying to qualify that way. But, you know, I can say I've lived a pretty good life, in my opinion. But when I look at I just look at the general situation that the U.S. is in, man, it's frightening to me because it's worse than it was. It's worse than it was in the 70s and the 80s. All of a sudden, it's got to the point now that the racial crimes or the hate crimes are on a rise. Why? It's because somebody has fueled this whole thing, and it has to be coming from our government. And how do we get these guys out? I don't think we can.
Well, I think that's the scary part is that you talk about Eldridge Cleaver and the Panther, you know, power to the people. I think the people are so confused, and in some ways, the biggest thing that's really happening is, you know, economically, our country is really sinking because we don't have a middle class anymore. So you have working poor fighting the totally impoverished, beyond, you know, total beyond poverty, and so you have essentially. You have despair, and you have anger, and you have people that are absolutely, basically at a point where they say, you know, our lives we're inflamed. We don't like the direction things are going. We feel terrible. We have no hope, and we're going to take everybody over the cliff with us. Everybody, and it feels like that there's not enough leadership in Congress or within elected office that can really counter that. It feels like that rage movement, and it's being fueled by the president now. And so, you know, that's the scary part to me, is that the rage movement is not just, you know, it's not just sort of like some kooks in the corner and they're just, you know, I'll just ignore them. No, they're getting a lot of traction. In fact, they're getting enough traction where we could see some serious well, we already are seeing it in some ways.
Yeah, and it's gaining power because now the people who are in power are the ones who are fueling this whole thing.
Exactly. Because
for some reason, it's advantageous for them to do this. But now, you know, when you look at the fact that when I drive down through the black neighborhoods, even especially if you get into the ghettos and the barrios and all these places, there are no supermarkets. There are no real businesses going on. There's no Macy's and no shopping centers like that. You look at it, you go, like back in my hometown of Fort Wayne, the people have to drive all the way over to the suburbs practically to go grocery shopping. To me, that's part of it. I mean, that plays on a young kid growing up in that neighborhood. That plays on their mind. That shapes their whole feelings about their self-worth. Am I making sense with
I
this?
want you to go. No, I'm marinating in this, but can you? I mean, being that I didn't know most of my I just didn't grow up like that. Can you explain the self-worth component? Why that would be a debilitating thing for them, and why and why that it's not, and why it's real? Because some people will counter and say, "Oh, that don't be a victim." It's not being a victim. Can you explain the self-worth component to that?
The whole thing about it is when you grow up seeing, you see, as far as all the ads on TV, all the fact that when you see a commercial on TV and you see they'll talk about a product and they'll have a white family and they're all smiling and doing everything, and then the same product with a black family and they're dancing and they're acting all like minstrels. You know what I mean?
Right.
I look at it and I see that, and so yeah, these are happy black folks. So that's the kind of stuff that a kid growing up, when you look at that, I remember being a kid growing up and looking at it. I didn't have any movie heroes. All of my movie heroes were white guys. Hell, I even liked Tarzan, and he was killing Africans.
Oh my God, Tarzan! That was the white depiction of people from Africa, was Tarzan.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up liking Tarzan.
Right.
And Jungle Jim and those, because I didn't know any difference. There was no other heroes. Roy Rogers and Gene Autry and all of those things. Gene Autry wouldn't even give black kids an autograph. And so, but these are the people that we grew up idolizing. These were our heroes.
Okay, so explain. So hold on, this is so important. Gene Autry would not give an autograph to black kids. But you knew that at the time, and yet you still looked up to him. Is that right?
Yeah, because I don't think we would go to the movies and we would go for the fantasy that the movies provided for us. That's what movies are. You go there and you fall in love with the hero, just like if you go see the Transformers, there's robots, for crying out loud, but you go with the good robot.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just like, that's what movies do to us. And so,
I dig. So okay, go ahead. But I mean, that I still can't square that. Well, anyway, it's fine.
Let me put it like this: all of the white heroes are men of action. Daniel Boone and all of these. I'm just picking names just for something, but the warriors. They were all warriors. They were all guys who would go and liberate countries. They call it liberation, but they would go. Custer and all of those guys. All of the black heroes are pacifists. Martin Luther King and guys who didn't really get violent. That's the way our lives are. I mean, if a black guy is a leader, Malcolm X was painted as being a militant, and he didn't kill anybody. You know what I mean? But he was a guy to be fearful of. Now Martin Luther King, yeah, he's a nonviolent guy. Still killed him, but so as a kid you grow up and you look at this and it shapes you. It shapes you. There's that way back in the back of your mind fear, or just acknowledge that, this is the world we live in, and it's not the same for me as it is for you. If something goes wrong, and like they said, most of the kids, there are more minority kids getting expelled from school for the same things that white kids don't get expelled from school for. Now that shapes your whole self-worth. That shapes it. I mean, for some reason, you're not going to get the same fair shake. So that's what I meant about shaping your self-worth.
Right, I dig. Did you did you leave music at any point? I mean, did you just get to a point where you were making enough?
I did.
Go ahead.
I did. No. When the disco movement came about.
So we're talking about Van McCoy, Gloria Gaynor, this kind of thing where all of a sudden it was, well, we can get a dance floor hit and play records, and we don't have to bring in a live band. I mean, can you talk about that period of time? Why you walked away from music?
I walked away because all of a sudden now I couldn't get the same money that I used to get, because they didn't have to pay it, because now all of a sudden the disco places were packing the rooms, and they were playing records, and so we'd have to take less money in order to work, and so basically it got down to the point as it is now where you have to pay, you have to rent the room from the hotel here in Vegas. You got to rent the room, and well, they call it a four wall or whatever it is. But in other words, it's on you. The hotel won't pay you to play that. You have to pay them to play that. And so I left the business back to doing that disco thing because I couldn't get the right money, and the jobs were really hard to come by. And so I stopped, and I stopped for 6 years. Basically, I drove a messenger car. I painted houses. It was a real good growth period for me because he gave me the one thing that I knew I could sustain myself out of the business. Because I'm a hardworking guy, so I can go out and find a gig, and I'm not ashamed to do any sort of work if I need it.
Mm-hmm.
So, I didn't let my ego get in the way of that. So. But yeah, I stepped out for 6 years. And then I got the record, put it in a magazine, because I became friends with Jerry Buss, the owner of the Lakers.
Get out of here.
Yeah, he was a fan. He was a Checkmate fan. And
I love it, dude. The basketball cats love the good music,
Yeah, and you know what happened? I was working at the Playboy Club, doing a gig at the Playboy Club, and I started dating one of the bunnies. And Jerry Buss was dating her sister. So we met that way. And he went, "Oh yeah, I remember you, man. I remember the Checkmates and everything." And we became tight buddies. And so he financed a CD. Not a CD. It was a LP at that point called "The Sun Still Shines." And I got that song, put it in a magazine out of that CD. I wrote that song, and it got all the way up to number 2 on the soul charts before I realized that there were no records in the store. And it came off the charts right away. Some guy was scamming him. I don't know what it was, but yeah, so that pulled me back in. Then I started working again when that record came out. And
could you talk about the just the feeling of, or how things had changed, if at all, in the live music context, especially as it related to the connection between the audience and the musician? Was there a definitive change between the interaction and how people? Because we're very receptive as far as music is. It's not about patting your foot to it or even getting on the dance floor about it. I mean, in some ways, it's just you go to see concert state, you're supposed to sit there and watch people have these technical skills or perform something in a very formulaic way. You pay a lot of money and you go home. I'm just curious. I'm just curious if you saw in that what you noticed as far as interaction between audience and musician, and more to the point, how did we get to a point now where it seems that a musician is not considered a profession but rather art because you can't quantify it, so it's not really a profession.
Yeah, you're right, because now working, it was a profession back in the 60s, 70s, and all the way up before that, because you could sustain a livelihood.
It was respected. I think it was respected, though. I mean, I think Dizzy Gillespie and I think those cats. You may have had cultural bias towards people of color, but you had to respect their genius, and therefore it was a profession.
Yeah.
Anyway, it does. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, but to look at it, to say, taking myself for instance, I've been able to sustain myself in this business for 60 years. It's one of those things where I spent 7 years with the Steve Miller Band, and traveling around with them in my 70s, seeing how everything was shifting toward pre-recorded music tracks. People are doing track shows a lot. They'll get everything is pre-recorded now. So the musician is not as important anymore, because it's just, when you see these acts come through, and they'll be big record acts, and they'll come through and they'll just put their tracks on, and they have a production, some dancers and stuff going on, and the lights and everything going, and the audience is totally they're fine with that. They don't say, "Wait a minute, where are the live musicians?"
Right.
You never hear that. They go, "Wow, what a great show," and there's no real band. They might have a couple guys on stage, but the rest of it is piped in through the, it's piped in, but, Jake, that's the future. It's going to be track shows. It's going to be track shows, and there will be a few bands that may be able to do stuff, but I think as far as the audience is, I think the audience just like to see a good performance. And when audience go to see record acts, they go to hear the music. And just like there could be one guy from the original band, and the audience will still come anyway. And they'll be called whatever the band is, but they're not seeing that band anymore, but they're hearing the music, and that's enough.
But also the idea where everything now, nothing is pressed or even recorded if it's not going to meet the bottom line, which I don't think was the case with the Checkmates. I mean, there's that organic ability of identifying and cultivating true art, a true artist is gone. I mean, you see that as being completely non-existent, because, I mean, the cats like you mentioned Steve Miller. He's a cat I haven't talked to yet, but he goes on these tours with, Tower of Power and Journey.
Yeah.
And these cats, I mean, bless them, they're getting paid, but they're playing the same music that they played 40 years ago. They're not doing anything new, and the audience doesn't want that. They come, they pay a lot of money to see this just regurgitated older stuff. So I'm just like, where is the? I mean, a lot of
here's the problem. Here's the problem. When I was traveling with Steve, we cut 2 CDs. We cut 2. One called Bingo, and the other one called Let Your Hair Down. We cut 2 CDs, and when we played those at the show, the audience didn't respond. The audience came to hear the hits. They came to hear the hits, and that's what the audience comes to hear, is to have that experience with the hit songs. Journey did their hits, and same thing with Tower of Power. New songs, you might slip a new song in, but if you slip in too many new songs, uh, you know, the people are going to be unsatisfied because they come there to hear those hits. That's just the way it is with those concerts. Or like Joe Cocker, he came out there and he did his old I Get By With a Little Help from My Friends, and people loved it. I loved it because that's what Cocker is. You know, and that was the whole thing, man, watching Paul McCartney and Santana and these guys. When they played their hit songs, that's what you wanted to hear. So, you know, that's the only thing I can say for that. You know, for them to try to come up with new stuff, they have their old audience who don't really want to hear new stuff from that audience. I mean, from that artist.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. This is fascinating stuff. We're going to definitely have to do part 2, man. I mean, we've already been cooking here for 57 minutes. Can you just talk to my audience about a good sort of these guys get deified in some ways, and maybe rightfully so. But you know, we spent a lot of time on social justice today, or lack of injustice, and do you people like Sammy Davis Jr., yourself, who played for white audiences? I mean, how did you help progress? How did Sammy help the progress of his own people?
You know, there's a phrase that some of the guys use. They say, you know, people talked about Sammy and say that he was sort of, and I'm not even comfortable saying this about Sammy Davis, but I've heard people say that Sammy was sort of an Uncle Tom because, you know, he was so comfortable with white audiences. Now, the reason I say I'm uncomfortable with it because I knew Sammy, and I knew that he was very, very involved with the civil rights movement. He was very, very involved. And so, but the fact was, you know, you make your friends, and sometimes, you know, you make friends with people, and if you're sophisticated enough to realize that a person's race is not, that's just the race. I mean, it's something that you're born into. You had nothing to do with it. You were just born that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the person that you meet is just like if you and I meet and we become friends. I don't think of you as oh, that's my white friend.
Right.
I don't think of you that way. You're my friend. You know, just like I was playing golf with a guy, and he goes, "Man, here I am, the only white guy out here with you, with 3 colored guys." And I said, "Colored guys?" He goes, "Well, like, I don't know what to call you guys." I said, "Why don't you just call me Sonny? You know, why do you have to, you know, where's all this come from, you know?" But now, the thing with Sammy Davis was, Sammy was one of my mentors. He was just really a generous guy with that sort of stuff, and he would help you along if he saw potential. And he did that with us. Sammy did he had his own show that lasted three episodes of his series. He's supposed to have a series. And we went to New York and we filmed it. And he did 3 shows, and one of the white female artists hugged him and kissed him on the cheek, and all the sponsors pulled their and this was probably 1969
Wow.
or 70, 1969. They pulled the sponsorship. Same thing happened to Nat King Cole with his TV show. You know, it's Sammy Davis. So why can't you hug him? I mean, what does that hurt? But anyway, so Sammy was really, really nice that way. And Frank Sinatra was really nice. Frank Sinatra pulled us out of the nightclubs and got us on the strip doing hotels. It was Frank Sinatra, and he was just Frank Sinatra. I don't think had a racist bone in his body. I don't think. from everything I could see for him, he was just really. I have just nothing but total respect for him. Not only as an artist, but as a man.
Hmm.
And and we opened for him a couple times, and he was just, yeah, nothing but respect for me.
Sonny, I just have had a ball talking to you, man. Let's just stay in touch and let's plan on doing part 2 in the near future. I will get you a copy of this interview as soon as possible, and
Okay.
happy July 4th to you, my brother.
Same thing to you, Jake. Thank you so much for sharing your airtime with me. And if you happen to come to Vegas again, let's sit down and have a lunch or something.
Oh, it sounds no, definitely. Well, we'll be. Yeah, I mean, I'm in Tucson. It's only 6 hours, man. We'll do it.
Well, great.
All right, Sonny. Much love, man.
Thank you, and enjoy your 4th, man.
You too, brother. Peace.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Sonny Charles, just another legend. We'll be back later on today with the legendary Paul Jackson. Happy 4th of July, and we'll be back later.